I'm Evan with Buckeye Bullnose. Welcome to this episode. Today we're going to talk about the DuraSpark2 ignition system. Okay, so let's talk DuraSpark2. Super simple system. First, you're going to need the DuraSpark2 ignition box and the wiring, which we've got right here. I'm not using a ballast resistor, so I need an aftermarket coil like this Excel 8140 right here. And then I'll also show you the part that we're going to eliminate by not using a ballast resistor on this old style coil here. You can still use it, but why? So let's get into it. I'm going to bring it down here on the table and I'll show you what I've got. Okay, so the DuraSpark2 system I think is definitely overlooked. It's reliable, it's cheap, and you can find it almost anywhere, especially scrapyards. It came in all kinds of Ford vehicles. So if you've dealt with the DuraSpark system at all, you're going to know what this is. This is the control box. The control box is the brain for the whole system. So all you need to do is pull the box out of the truck or car, whatever you're stealing it out of, and take the wiring harness in its entirety that's attached to it. It'll make this super simple. It's only a couple wires. So this red wire on the two-prong plug that attaches to the white wire, you can snip that off. You're not going to need it if you're not running a ballast resistor. The ballast resistor just reduces the amount of power that goes to the OEM style coil so you don't burn it out. Now there's a part on your, or a tab on your ignition solenoid that will put 12 volt, full 12 volt power to the DuraSpark system or to the coil, so you get good ignition on startup, and then it goes back to reduced voltage through the ballast resistor. So when I showed you this coil, this doesn't require it. You're not going to worry about burning it out by putting full power to it. So with the harness pulled out of the truck, the only things you need to do for the aftermarket setup is cut. There's a plastic tab, which I'll show you here, on the old coil. Come on. This right here, you cut this off because you're not going to need it. This would be, it has your tack output and your power for your to attach to your coil, and the OEM style coils don't have screw-on terminals. So we can get rid of this, and then you're just going to put eyelet connectors on the end of it, and towards the end of the video I'll show you how I make these connections and make them look nice. So it's really super simple. I'll show you where I put it in this truck, and you can put it wherever you want, just someplace to keep it cool. I'm not going to end up using this ignition box. I'm going to use something else, but I want to show you how to use this because it's super affordable compared to, you know, the $300 some odd ignition boxes plus distributors. If you want to get your truck up and running or your car up and running really cheaply, this is the way to do it. You can use it on the 460s, 302s, 351s, any of the Ford engines. It's super simple, don't overlook it. So let's get to putting it in the truck where I put it, and then okay, so I'm having some issues editing some of these videos, so I'll give you the quick brief rundown. I'll give you the brief rundown of how I mounted this in the next scene that you're going to see inside the truck. So the panel that I'm talking about is going to be this one right here. I took the DuraSpark ignition control box and I put it up against here, drilled some holes, and I through bolted it. The box itself is threaded. I think it's 1/4 20. It's something super common. I don't remember off the top of my head. But all I did was bolt this to the panel, and then we'll put it up into the truck, and then there's a hole in the front that we're going to use for cooling if you're going to use this. That's my original plan, but I'm not going to use it long term, but I still want to show you how to do it. So this will lead you into the next scene where I'm in the truck and I'll install it. Okay, so now we're on the passenger side of the pickup truck. So as you saw in the picture earlier, this is where we pulled that panel off of. Right up in here is the hole we're going to use for ventilation to keep this thing cool. So to take this panel off, there are 4 5/16 headed screws that you will need to take off to remove that panel. So since we've got the DuraSpark box mounted to the panel, let's put this thing in here and then get our wires run through the firewall. all started by hand and run them in with a 5/16 nut driver. Once those are all snug, we're going to run our 2 cables through the firewall. When you're taking these trucks apart, save all of these grommets. They're going to come in handy, as long as they're in good shape. If you have to, because a lot of them are taped and sealed, just carefully slice down the side of it, peel them apart, and remove the wire harness from them. You can glue them back together, but this will save you, because I don't know where you can buy these. You might be able to find them LMC, but can't guarantee that. So we'll find a suitable hole to run these through. Like so. And now we can head to the outside of the truck and I'll show you how to wire it up at the engine. So now we're up at the engine bay. I have a brand new harness from QuickWire that has wires very clearly marked on what's power, where they go, and it's super simple. If you're using stock wiring, that's no problem. Just look up a wiring diagram for the DuraSpark system and it'll tell you which wires are your power. So first we're going to start off with putting the coil on before we run our wires, so we know where our wires are going to run to. So my coil is going to go back in the stock position, and you're going to put it so your positive is to your left and your negative post is to your right. And we're going to very carefully take the small nuts and lock washers off. These are very easy to lose, so keep an eye on them. So now we're ready to install our wires. So we're going to start with the power and tachometer output for the QuickWire harness. With the QuickWire harness, the pink number 20 wire goes to the positive side of the coil, like that. And the purple wire, number, let me see here, number 23, is going to go to the negative side of your coil. That's your tachometer output. Once you've got those put where you need to, you're going to take the 2 eyelet connections that we made earlier. I run mine around the back side of the engine towards the coil, and then the plug that we said was for the distributor is going to get plugged into the distributor right here. We're just going to go over the coolant hose, so I'm going to have to take it off a little bit later. So that's plugged in, and now your distributor's hooked up. Come back around to this side, and you're going to gather your wires here, and we're going to get those hooked up. Our red wire is going to go to our positive side of the coil, and the green wire is going to go to the negative side. Install your washers and a nut. We're going to do it one more time. And we dropped it. heard it hit the ground, so we're back. To install that. And with a nut driver and a 5/16 socket, we're going to tighten these down. You just want them snug. Don't go crazy with it because you'll break the connections on your coil. And then to finish it off, take your wire that goes to the coil terminal on your distributor, and the other end, who would have thought, goes to the coil. And that's how you install the DuraSpark system. So I told you I'd show you how to make the nice neat connections that I had on my DuraSpark harness. Now I've done this throughout the entire harness that I put in my truck. My truck has a brand new harness from QuickWire, so none of the original wiring is there except for this DuraSpark harness, but it's not going to be in there for very long. So when you go to the auto parts store, you pick up these connectors. They've got this hard plastic coating where you crimp it. Now if you get a bunch of these underneath the dash crimped together, they look like garbage. So I'll show you the way to make it look neat and clean, and it's fairly simple. So you need a few of the connectors. You need your wire that you're going to be putting into your system. Two small pliers. I have a pair of slip joints and a small needle nose. Wire, strippers, cutters, crimpers, heat shrink, and a lighter. So I've got my run of wire that my bit of wire that I'm going to run, excuse me, and I'm going to strip back just a little bit off the end. Alright, that's done. Now the reason for these pliers is to grab the eyelet and the big pliers on one end, a little needle nose on the other, very carefully work that plastic coating or cover off the end of it. You don't need that. It looks like shit. Set that to the side. Need a little bit of heat shrink. Take about an inch, inch and a half, whatever you want. It's all up to you. Now, if you've ever done brakes or replaced a brake line and you made fittings, the nicest flare you're ever going to make is when you haven't put the flare nut on. So, same goes for the heat shrink. Put the heat shrink on before you make your crimp connection. Because in some situations you won't be able to get the heat shrink on from the other side. And then you'll make a super nice crimp and you'll have to cut the thing off because you did it wrong. So once you've verified that your heat shrink is on there, you can go ahead and make the crimp. Put them in your crimpers. Don't drop it. Okay, got it in my crimpers, and we're going to crimp it. Give it a tug test. If you give it a good tug and it doesn't come off, you did it right. If you give it a little tug and it comes off, you did it wrong. So, it's on there and crimped. Bring your heat shrink up to the top here, like so, and heat it up. Just like that. And doesn't that look a lot neater than using that plastic stuff? It takes up a lot less space in the engine bay too, which is, or not engine bay, but your wiring harness. I did all this style in my dash that I put together, and it took up a lot less space, and everything was very, very neat, relatively speaking. It's still a mess, but it's way nicer than it would have been with all this extra stuff on there. So that's how you make nice wire connections with cheap connectors. Hopefully that helps, and let me know. And now you got it installed. If it's done right, it should start up. Look at that, not too bad. Now we have tachometer output. Simple as that.